I give myself one really sad night with a giant bottle of white wine and a half a Xanax, and I sleep really, really well, where I'm like just petty and fucking small, and I look up who else's projects got, picked up, and I stomp my feet and whatever. And then the next day I wake up and I realize that I have other ideas and a really killer family and an amazing career that everybody wishes that they had. Lots of people wish that they had, and start over. Just do something different, whatever. This is the thing. It's so corny, but it does sort of all work out the way it's supposed to. And usually you don't know why. And again, I sound like I'm like a bumper sticker, but it's Marty Short like famously has this pie that he keeps in his head, which is like 1/3 work, 1/3 family, 1/3 friends, and that all three have to be in balance at all times.
Hi, I'm Miriam Banikarim, host of the Messy Parts podcast. Today, we're going to have on Anna Gasteyer, actress, singer, comedian. You know her from SNL, but you also know her from her Broadway roles from Elphaba and Wicked to the sitcom Suburgatory. Anna has incredible range. She is relentless and she's incredibly talented. She has many nuggets to impart, including don't compare yourself. And also, don't wait for permission, just go for it. You're going to want to hear this conversation.
You know a lot.
Well, I now know even more.
Amazing.
So we met after your SNL days.
Yeah.
You grew up playing the violin and sort of having this very classically trained.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, yes, I did. I played violin and I was a classical singer. I grew up in a very kind of traditional music family, I guess would be the thing. They loved Broadway though. Like we listened to Broadway a lot. We had a lot of like soundtracks and things like that as well. But we didn't it wasn't something that I thought I would do exactly.
I read that you chose Northwestern because they really wanted you to have a BA.
I chose Northwestern because I was the only school I got into.
I understand. I got into Barnard off the wait list. So, we talked about that.
Yeah, which really, really beefs up your gratitude, by the way, over the years. So I wanted to go, what I really wanted to do was go to theater school. So I played violin and then I kind of bargained out. I was good at violin, but it's a very lonely enterprise. Classical music, it's just hours and hours and hours by yourself. I knew pretty early on that I could sing. And so I bargained out for voice lessons. And then, I wanted to go to I really just wanted to go to get a theater degree. I wanted to go.
Did you do theater?
Yeah, I did tons and tons of theater. I was like the star of all the shows.
School.
Yeah,
right.
In middle school and high school, and did theater camps and I did programs and stuff. It wasn't like jazz hands or anything like that, but I liked it and I knew I was good at it. And so I wanted to do like Juilliard or North Carolina School for the Arts, but my parents were insistent that I get a BA. And Northwestern had a 5-year program where you could get a music degree and a liberal arts degree that I applied for. But really, I auditioned very well at that school. So that's how I got in.
And they wanted you to have a BA because they wanted you to have something to fall back on.
Yes, this is the way parents think.
Turns out they do think that way.
Yeah, they do. All of them, including me, by the way. And I have
we have children of our own. We have children of our own and we think that way.
Well, actually, you want to know something? It's not even really about falling back on it. I will argue because I am a huge believer in the 4-year educational experience. I wish everybody could have it. And I don't even care if they study the thing that they are going to be. I think we have way too much focus on kind of a rarefied, ascent towards excellence and having to study one thing. It's really just, for me, the things I really got out of college were exposure to all kinds of different points of view. I went to school in a different region than I grew up in. I met all different kind of kids that I knew. Again, the East Coast bubble is really tiny. And I think the collective of going to school in the Midwest, I didn't even know that fraternities existed before I went to college. I thought it was something from the 50s. But so that's why I went to Northwestern, was I got into the voice department and I went for 1 year as a voice major. And I absolutely I hated being a classical music student. I was bored out of my mind, and a bad music student, I might add. They had theater or they had classical music. And there were showbiz kids. Midwestern kids don't fuck around at all about musical theater. They all
they're deep.
Really good. They all work at Six Flags over the summer and, really good tap dancers and all that kind of dinner theater. They all had their equity cards. So it was a little bit overwhelming that way, but I just got to dance around in a lot of that. And I ended up having a very bizarre confusing resume building. I worked with Mary Zimmerman, the, performance art level phenom of the theater, who's getting her PhD at Northwestern, and did all these incredible shows. And then I did a ton of improv comedy, and I joined the improv comedy group there. And because it was Chicago, it's like the birthplace of improv comedy. So I met the comedy people. I was like, this is the thing I'm going to do. And I learned how to write.
Why did you know comedy was for you?
I didn't really. I just met those people. I didn't. Everyone I went to high school with was funny. So I didn't really think that I had a unique talent. But when I auditioned for the improv show, which I just auditioned for because everybody did, like all the fun theater people were auditioning. So I auditioned, and I suddenly realized, I think I'm pretty good at this. And these people are like tribally my people.
But what does that mean? What does your people mean?
It's hard to explain. It's just like a weird mutant second skin. When you meet people that think like you're just like, I had no idea that this was something that I had in common with other people, the way their brains work, what they think is funny, the way they want to write, what they want to do. It's just that moment that you find. And again, by the way, I don't even think you have one set of people. I have lots of them. I also have musical theater people that I also feel the same way about now that I do so many Broadway shows. Like, I just think there's different, you have a kinship with a certain kind of person, a person who thinks the way you do, the person that finds things funny, that makes things up. And I will say the sort of unifying principle of those people that I met at Northwestern. And by the way, some of them weren't even in the improv scene now that I think about it. They were makers. They were all makers and doers. They were all motivated to not sit around waiting to get cast in something. They were very, that's been like the guiding principle of my entire career.
And then were they all funny?
They very, very funny. And learning early on, it was, we went to college at the same time. So it was the late 80s. It was like, I wasn't going to be cast at that point. We have a joke, like in my family, I was ethnic in the 80s. Like because I had curly hair, I didn't look like, the traditional.
Demi Moore.
I did. Yeah. I mean, if you were a brunette, you look like Demi Moore, but otherwise it was like Courtney Thorne Smith, that was sort of the option. So
yes, we were the 90210.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills, whatever that was.
Yeah. I just didn't fit any of those little boxes. So I just started writing for myself, and that's what that group predominantly did.
Did that make you feel like an outsider?
I mean, I always have been an outsider, even growing up the way that I did, like characterizing it as like, oh, I went to Sidwell, this little bubble. I lived in the, wrong neighborhood. I lived near the Capitol in DC, which in the 70s and 80s was like a very kind of, it was gentrifying, but it was pretty rough around the edges in some parts of it. And like, we didn't have the subway. There wasn't subway access. I took the bus an hour and a half to school. So my dad, we were not nearly as wealthy as the people that I went to school with. I mean, I figured out later, I was like, oh, well, my parents could still send me to private school. I mean, it was a different time in the 70s and you could maybe do that. But I was definitely an outsider. And I went to a public elementary school. There were 7 white kids in the whole elementary school. So I was an outsider in elementary school. And then I was sort of an outsider in the fancy uptown school. And then I was an outsider as an East Coaster in a Midwest setting. And I was an outsider as a comedian in musical theater. And I was an outsider. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. I think it actually just means you have a different and more interesting perspective.
I actually think it fuels you.
Yeah. And I think it makes it irrelevant in a weird way. You're just like, okay, well, these are my sets of circumstances. And the more I meet people, the more I realize, I mean, it's crazy. You meet, everybody has that from a different angle, no matter where they are.
Okay. So you're there, you find your people. I kind of love that. And then you move to LA.
I just like fell around California for 2 years. I went up to San Francisco for a part of that and then moved back down. And then I just started, as many people do around 24, I just started to buckle down. And that's when I started classes at the Groundlings, and I got cast in a tour show. I got cast in the first, it's so funny, Jeffrey Sellers, the big Broadway producer, produced Hamilton. Like it was his first show that he produced. We would do staged productions, like exact episodes of the Brady Bunch. It was called the Real Life Brady Bunch. And it toured across the country. It was like this huge success. We played like every college across the entire country. It was incredible.
Oh, my nose.
Toured
like
for a year.
Marsha Brady.
Yeah, that was one of them. Oh, My Nose and Jan. I can't remember all of them now. But anyway, yeah. So
when I first moved to the States, I watched a lot of Brady Bunch.
So did I. I found it so comforting. And again, I'd never been to California, so I didn't know anyone who had a house like that. I actually think about it all the time. I think about how our generation had all of these kind of touch points that made a ton of things seem common knowledge.
Because there was only 3 channels.
There were only 3 channels. Exactly.
So you do the groundlings. How long do you do that for?
I did that for 2 stints, and then I got put into the main company, and then I got SNL like almost immediately.
Well,
So
okay, I'm sorry. So let's go back to that.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, you make that sound so easy.
it wasn't easy, but it was how it went.
Did they find you? Did you have to audition?
Yeah. So the way that went down is that, frankly, Will Ferrell was, so in 95, they did a total cast rehaul and turnover. I don't know if you remember that, but the SNL was like Saturday Night Dead and all that crap. As it does, it cycles in and out of favorability, and it was definitely at its low point. So they did sort of a complete overhaul in 95, and then they sort of did a couple of tweaks in 96 where they just held auditions for, they wanted maybe a black guy and maybe another woman. They weren't, they were just kind of like, how could we even out this cast? And so Will Ferrell, actually, I didn't know him very well, but I'd done like a few like improv sets with him and stuff at the Groundlings, and we liked one another. And he suggested like 4 or 5 of us that were in the company at the time. And so we sent tapes in, and they flew me. It's really crazy. I think I'm not 100% sure of this because I was in such a blackout because they flew us, you fly back it was weird. We were tested in 8H. I was in LA at the time.
Studio 8H in 30 Rock.
Yeah. So it's really odd because if you live in LA, you're used to like driving, parking at a movie studio, like going in, doing your audition, leaving. Like I kind of had that system down, but then to go into, do you remember like when you first got to New York? I mean, even coming here as a kid, I had an aunt here growing up. It wasn't like my first time to New York, but it may as well have been because that sort of, sometimes I'm so sad that I don't feel this way anymore. Like the intensity of the vertical experience where you're like looking up and the beehive of life. And they put everybody those days who came in for SNL at the Paramount Hotel.
Oh yeah.
Which was like the most 90s, and the elevators like super dark.
It was like a disco hotel.
Yeah, just terrible. And the rooms were super, super dark.
So
like
small. They were also really small.
Postage stamp, like, New York City at its best. So I auditioned, and the big thing, it was totally mind blowing. I mean, it was.
So,
and then
sorry, I don't know what an audition looks like. Like, what is that like? You show up and they give you
an SNL audition is a really different audition than an audition. Usually, an audition you're just going in and you know the words and you learn But for an SNL audition, they've done a lot of documentaries and stuff on it, especially this year because of the 50th. But it's like a little 1-person show. Like you basically,
you have to write it yourself.
I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah. But I did like I had characters and stuff that I did at SNL. So, at the Groundlings. So I kind of like worked it. You put together like a little 1-person show. It's like 5 minutes. They give you some rough guidelines. I imagine it changes every now and again, but it's pretty consistent. And
Were you terrified?
Yes, terrified. Terrified.
And when it ended, did you think you got the gig?
No. This has only happened a few times in my life. I can't always pull this out. I wish that I could live by this philosophy, but this is the philosophy to live by.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah, you kind of live this way, so you probably don't need this pep talk. But I do tell young performers all the time, like there have been a few auditions in my life where I've left everything on the table, where the win was not whether I got the job, it was whether or not I did what I could have done. And most of the time that I've done that, I've gotten the job, coincidentally. But so I knew that I did not want to leave anything to chance, that I didn't want to walk out and say like, I wish I'd prepared more, or I wish, whatever. And I knew that Will somehow got word to me. They famously don't laugh in SNL auditions. It's kind of a dick move, but because
the energy of the audience would actually help.
Well, and also like if you're a comedian, the actual cadence of the rhythm of it in your head is a really specific way if it's material that you're accustomed to. But partially I think it's like some kind of litmus test that they've established years and years ago, but also it was like 3 guys, it was just a whole different, when I look back at myself, I'm like, I can't even believe I did that. But Charlie, who, my husband, we knew about this. So
Were you dating at the time?
We were engaged. That was actually the bigger drama.
Charlie, who you went to high school with.
Yes, but we didn't start going out in high school until later. We were engaged. So the bigger drama was SNL came knocking And I was like, in the last 6 weeks before my wedding. So I was in like a real, like, oh my God, what am I going to do if I get this? And, are my waspy in-laws going to kill me if I have to pull out of the wedding day? And, just all that stuff. Cause I didn't know like if the timing was going to work out or anything. It did. It all worked out. But anyway, he just sat and pretended, he just sat like Mount Rushmore and stared at me. And
while you practiced
I
at
just
home.
would run my audition like relentlessly without reaction. So I knew what it sounded like without reaction over and over and over again, so that I was comfortable doing it like with nothing.
So you put it all on the table
Mm-hmm.
and you leave and you're
I
not sure.
confess that I don't really remember the timeline. Then I waited forever. Then that's the part I don't really remember. But I will say this. I left the audition. I knew that I'd done everything I could. And that was all I needed to do. Somebody was on the elevator and they're like, hey, I just saw your audition. That was great. And I don't know. I just knew that it was good. I knew that I hadn't, just by my standards, chunked anything. Like I knew that everything had seemed to work. And I think I got like a couple chuckles. Like I just let it go. I let it go.
Okay.
And so this is why I say it's like a teachable moment, because like, for example, with Wicked, I did the same thing, which was another major milestone career moment for me, because after I left SNL, I was determined to work on Broadway, which is easier said than done.
And we have to unpack that because it's not a natural transition for
No,
most
not
people.
at all. And all of them are worlds that are very hard to break into and require.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm amazing at comedy. Guess what? I'm going to go do a very difficult, vocal thing on Broadway.
I think
the third
that was
alphabet.
actually harder in some ways, because people get it's really hard to work on Broadway, and they work their asses off and make $5, and understandably are very annoyed when television people show up and want to do it too. Especially
comedians.
I don't know. But I mean, it turned out fine, but it was, I knew that I had again, it's an impossible role. And I had to sing as well as I possibly could. And when I did that one, I did not get cast. It was to replace Idina Menzel. And
so you auditioned to be the second alphabet.
So yes, famously, they called me in to be for the final workshop with Idina and this girl, Julia Murney. Everybody ended up being an alphabet down the line. And then, but it was my last season of SNL and I was pregnant with Frances. And so I didn't go. And then they brought me in when Idina was leaving, and I made that final callback. And then like 2 months later, they called and they're like, hey, we're going to start a Chicago company. We want you to start the Chicago company. So again, like you don't always, this is the part of my little like pep talk, like you don't know where it's going to play out or how, but it was such a perfect scenario because number one, because it was an original company, we had like a full rehearsal process. We had, the original director, we had the original choreographer, like everything kind of existed in a wasn't just like getting plugged into a Broadway show, which is usually how it happens. And you have 2 weeks and you're just like vomited into the existing show, which is a nightmare.
But I want to go back because what you're describing, which, amazing. You've had incredible success. I got to come to Chicago and actually see you perform as Alphaba, which was incredible. But there are all these moments that are actually quite difficult along this journey. You're getting married and you're having this incredible career defining moment, right? Yeah. Then you're pregnant. You're like on the last season of SNL. I mean, these are difficult things to juggle.
Yeah.
Right. And you've picked a career where, arguably difficult to manage all those things because you're sort of at the mercy of the show.
Yeah. I would not have, I certainly didn't know that at the time I picked it. Do you know?
Yeah, who would?
Yeah. It's really itinerant performing for a living. It's not for the faint of heart.
What made you decide to leave SNL?
I was done. I'd run its course. It was 6 years. Charlie, my husband, got his MBA in the middle. We were ready to start a family. I was 35. At the time, those contracts were 5-year contracts, and I'd stayed an extra year. And I think I was just like, yeah, this is a good number. I've produced a lot of material. The show is tumultuous and has its ups and downs, and it's exhausting emotionally at times. And I was like, I don't want to have a baby and sort of be buffeted around the sea of work anxiety. No one had ever had a baby there. And there are not a lot of roadmaps for how people do it. And let's be completely frank, like no one makes it easy, even now.
Even now.
There's no childcare. There's no, like you and I, among our many, shared experiences, like I feel like 80% of what you do with other working women once you have babies is like run around wondering how to do it all. And
I say that, I rely on strangers. Like, oh my God, you're going to pick up my child. I don't know you. Okay, take
totally.
her.
Or like, just the panicky, like just throw money at it. Just the amount of like, I wish it were easier for people. I wish that there was a system in place that would help not penalize people.
There is no such thing as
Oh my
fair,
God.
and there's no such thing as balance.
I wish that I felt that. There's no such thing as balance. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's where I speak very, again, when I speak to students, and I never want to be like an old, like, you don't want to go into show business, because I hate those people. I hate show business is so fun. I love it. I love the people. Like I said, it started with this idea of tribe, like doing a Broadway show is like my children say, like, you are so happy when you were doing this. You're nicer. And even though I'm like exhausted,
But you get a family every show. You get a family.
You get a family. You get your sort of yayas. You get to sing every day, which literally statistically is shown to make people are happier who sing every day. And I think there is a thing, if you are born with the ability to sing and you have musicianship in your whatever, God-given or whatever you want to call it, doing it with other people who also have that, there's just an incredible sort of vibrational kinship that happens. It's really exciting to people, but it's a grind. It is a miserable grind of a job. I've missed out on some things, and I've missed some
I didn't have family close by who could just come take care of my children. It would have been nice.
And I've missed like weddings and bar mitzvahs and things that matter. I mean, my best friend from elementary school, like childhood, practically my sister, like grew up next door. I missed her. She's divorced. She doesn't, I'm still sad I missed her wedding.
Oh no, I have those moments.
I can't believe I wasn't there. It's crazy. And it was to make like a commercial parody for fake Gatorade for Saturday Night Live,
what you do. I remember.
But I didn't know how to ask also. I didn't know how to say like, this is a really important thing. And I feel like I do think this was gendered. I do think that I had to say like, well, I mean, I guess it's all SNL people, but the sense of like opportunity there. Like I just didn't know how to say, I'm not available until next Monday because I have a personal family obligation. I just didn't know how to do it.
It's funny. I didn't know how to say that either. I remember I was getting an award and I actually got a job at NBC. And so I had to accept the award like a month into the job. And my boss wanted me in Chicago for something. And I said to the awardees, I'm sorry, can somebody else come and accept the award on my behalf? I mean, now looking back, I'm so mortified I did that, but I didn't feel like I had
I get
permission to say a month in, like, you know what, I can't come to Chicago that day.
Yeah.
But okay, I want to go back for 1 second. So you're on the show for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly care about tribe and community. I actually know this about you just because you're that person. And I remember reading that you said working on SNL, it was not like a safe space, right? It wasn't like a hug fest, right? You were like, clearly there's this sense of like amazing talent, but also sort of a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
What kept you there for so long? And was that hard?
Well, I don't even know how to answer that. It's like, I wouldn't have, there's nothing comparable. It's like, at the time it was very hard. Definitely weirdly like in comparable community now. I mean, people have survived it. That's the interesting thing. When you come to the other side of it, you're like, could work with any one of those people and fast. That's the other thing. The shorthand is incredible. Dratch and I are writing a musical right now. Just like the speed with which we.
Well, you sort of lived through fire together with Rachel in some ways.
But all SNL people also have like it's back to that brain thing. Like there's a way that we can like solve a problem quickly. Like the flow that comedians get into when they're writing collaboratively together is like no other high that I probably have in my life. That is a thrilling, deeply addictive proposition and just beyond fun.
So fun.
Yeah. I mean, so yes, it is miserable and it's hard and it's a time pressure and it's in the public eye and everybody's got to comment on how different you look when they meet you in real life and, all of that stuff. I didn't enjoy that part of it. I don't really love the fame part of things. It's not very fun for me, but the creative part was incredibly intoxicating. I mean, always. There's,
Okay.
the hardest I've laughed. I mean, even just doing the 50th again, like, and you always think, oh, did I make that up? And nope.
No,
There's
it's
just
fun.
this, like, there's a secondhand, deep, profound joy. And leaving it is always hard, and I left. So there's times I wish that I'd stayed. I mean, when I see like how long Maya was able to stay with Maya Rudolph was able to stay after she had babies and how that worked for her. And she worked that for herself really well. But again, I'm not a person who can even ask a day off for a wedding. So how would I possibly have? I just know about myself that I wouldn't have been good at that, especially because I was the first one and I felt like all eyes were on how I was going to pull it off. And so at that point, I was just like, I think I'm going to step out. I've gotten what I need out of this and figure out the rest. But it was a little lonely, to do that.
100%.
I didn't really know any other moms like me as a result with my first. So
that's what being the first means.
Yeah, it was a little lonely.
It seems, and I don't know, you can correct me, that now post SNL, there's definitely like a female support group that you guys have formed.
Definitely. Yeah.
How did that happen?
At the 40th is when it started. So about 10 years ago, and actually really there were it sort of followed history because there was Betty White hosted and a bunch of us came back for the Mother's Day episode, which was Betty White. She was the oldest host at the time. And it was just really nice. Like we were reconnecting as almost all of us were mothers at that point. I think Rachel was pregnant with Eli and just kind of a different perspective, not just, hotshot late night comedy girls, but people with more dimensional approaches to life and womanhood and whatever. And so we just started spending time together. And then we started having these dinners and reunions and then these milestone birthdays that we celebrate together. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice to have, like I said earlier, I mean, just collaboratively too, we help each other out a lot. There's not that many of us on the planet. It's a very weird thing to have gone through as a human being, and then add to that as a, throw gender into that. We were greatly outnumbered, and I think it's just, and we're all we share an incredible work ethic and great sense of humor and perspective. So there's a lot of wisdom I think that we share with one another. I mean,
and now projects,
not to be all corny about it. Yeah, some projects and all of us collaborate. Like if we're all called upon to host, and we all do. You get sort of we share a certain presented a thing, and hey, I need jokes for this, and does this work? And
I love that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice.
Okay, so you leave, and did you know you were going to try Wicked? I mean, did you know as you were transitioning out because you begun to do?
I did. I knew. So at the time, again, remember, I left Saturday Night Live in 2002, which seems late, but really was historically still not. It was pre 30 Rock. It was pre Parks and Rec. Again, I was auditioning early on to be like Adam Carolla's wife in Adam Carolla's sitcom. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be Adam Carolla's wife on Adam Carolla's sitcom. My manager was a big comedy manager at the time. And he was like, you're not going to work in film. Women don't work in film. There's no comedy parts for women in film. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, it was like Seth Rogen's, the beginning of the bromance explosion that's still happening. And, there just weren't a lot of looks around. And so I went in 1 week to see Wonderful Town and Wicked actually. And they were on Broadway, and I can sing. And I was like, oh, well, obviously I can work on Broadway and I can stay in New York and crack my way.
And that's an amazing transition because, once you get locked into people seeing you one way, getting them to see you a different way is not so easy.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I did comedy roles. I went right into Alphabet, which was kind of weird. But so I did 5 Broadway shows and a bunch of those kind of things. And then I started working on television again. So Suburgatory, right? And so you started actually working regularly, not just coming on one episode. Yeah. What was that like? Well, those are those sweet jobs. I had a couple of series in a row where I was part of a big cast working a few days a week, where you're not the lead. And one was in Toronto, it was so easy. I could be home every weekend. Then, one was, Suburgatory was in LA, but it was fine. I worked, 2-3 days a week at the most, and not every week. So that was great. It was just, easy. For me, that was TV's so easy after you've done theater for whatever, a million years. Like there's so much free food. There's they're literally like, yeah, they paid for lunch,
Craft services.
Yes, literally. And I like I like working. I really like doing ensemble television. It's really fun.
It comes back to the collective.
Yeah. I like being a part of a community. I love, for sure. There's just something really goofy and fun and easy about it. And it's kind of that SNL thing. I love the read through table. I love comedy writers. All of that. There's not enough of it happening. I hope that the heyday is not completely over, but it feels
we all
like
hope the heyday's not.
Yeah, I know.
No.
I know.
I don't think stories will go away.
No, I hope not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, they've lasted this
I feel
long.
like comedies though are on. I'm like, where are the comedies? Where's the?
We could all use more.
We could use a little more like I Love Lucy. I just want like big dumb comedies, with wigs.
Yes, and less stress. I'd like less stress.
Yeah.
I find myself not being able to watch stressful shows.
No, I know. Same.
Yeah, so that's why I'd like some comedy.
Yeah.
That's actually why I love Hacks. I'm like, just make me laugh.
My God, the best.
Love Hacks.
Exactly.
I think the other thing that really strikes me is that you have incredible range, right? So you do a jazz record. I mean, you're willing to just completely go left, right, center. What is it about you that does that?
I like making things. You do too. I mean, look where we are. But, I'm not very good at sitting around, and I love the feeling. And for all of Saturday Night Live, for 20 years, I was producing and writing, but I wasn't getting credited for that. And that's one regret. If I could go back again, trailblazing, loneliness, stupidly, I should have worked harder to produce shows off the gate, but I didn't. But that's all I've really been doing. I mean, my records, my one-woman shows, because I tour with the Christmas records. And again, singing is...
I've loved seeing you at Joe's Pub.
It's really fun. Yeah. And having a Christmas album means that or holiday album, it means that you have sort of a thing you do every holiday. And we have like regulars now, and we always sell out, within the first couple of days. It's really fun.
So because we are both women who've juggled, what is that like? Like, what advice would you have for young women who are coming up? I mean, not the kind of advice that says don't do this, because guess what? If you love what you do, you're going to go do it. What useful tips should we give them? I
mean, I think your first thing you said is not do it, because what's going to feed you? And if you're not going to have time enough in your day you're going to be busy no matter what you do. So you may as well have it be something that you love, right? So that when you do come home for your 15 minutes with your children, they say you're a lot nicer when you're doing musical theater.
I definitely I'm nicer when I come home if I have a job I like.
That's exactly right. So, find something about it. It doesn't have to be whatever those years ago I did that Myers-Briggs or whatever, to try to determine what kind of jobs. And again, what does that mean? Do you like having a community? Do you like working remotely? Do you get your energy from other people? Do you get your energy, from ideating by yourself? Like those are good things to know about yourself, I think, out of the gate.
One thing I've noticed, because I was just on a panel and a woman came up to me and said she wanted to be more of a writer. Not theater writer, film writer. Yeah. She just wanted to write more. And she wanted to know how to transition into a writing job. And I was like, why don't you just start a Substack? I mean, I just think there's so many more opportunities for this generation. Like in our era, you had to get into a sitcom. You had to get into show.
Right.
Now people get famous from doing TikToks or Substacks.
You have to tell yourself, though, I mean, we both have daughters, right? We both have daughters with ambitions. And I probably the thing I carpet her the most is like, who are you waiting for to tell you that you're allowed to do this? You have to go do it. There's no...
And does she?
I think she's getting there. I think I had to. There was a day at which I had to say to someone at a party, and these are all like the tricks, right? I mean, acting is the funniest thing because most of the time you're not doing it. It's what you want to do. So when someone at a party says, what do you do for a living? It's so quick for you to be like, I'm a temp, or whatever the thing is, but actually just stating the truth. I'm an actress. I want to work as an actress. I'm developing a show for myself right now. When I learned that trick, when people were like, what are you working on right now? Because that's all anyone ever asks a performer. And you're like, well, I'm writing this and I have this idea and I have this. You actually have all of that agency. And when you can kind of state it to somebody, I love running. I train for marathons. It's probably my happy thing that I do, or whatever the thing is,
So it's about believing yourself and also being willing to say it out loud with confidence, right?
You have to be the first advocate, the very first one, not waiting for someone outside you to tell you what you're good at or what you are allowed to do. It's really like the thing, your aspiration is your identity. It's the thing that you want to be that gets you out of bed every morning.
Yeah. But I'm willing to embarrass myself. Like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And if it doesn't work out, like it does, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not terrified or that I have no fear, right? But I'm willing to go for it and put myself out there. I mean, I was not a cool kid and I seem to not have been too worried about that.
That's a great one.
Yeah. But I mean, it was a lucky accident.
Yeah, but it's a lucky accident to know that it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Who cares? Literally, who cares?
But that's a hard thing to impart to somebody.
Absolutely it is. But that's where you just have to like, whatever, play the tape. How bad did it go? I have done some really embarrassing bad jobs, humiliating. I have been really badly excoriated online. I will say this. This is another one I've been thinking about because I just had my birthday and I don't know, I was just getting pensive. And it's really hard in the world of the internet and Instagram and everything else. Stop comparing yourself to other people.
Oh my God, that's a tough one.
If I could go back and talk to myself at 25, it's so fucking irrelevant what anyone else is doing. It has nothing to do with my path. Nothing. But it's so easy to look this way and look this way. And it's especially in acting, you're like, well, there's literally nothing that you could control except for what you can do yourself. How well you prepared for that audition, how hard you tried, how hard you put your hat into the ring. I mean, I've just had a couple of, like, two of my most favorite things I've ever pitched. I've just pitched and I thought, oh my God, these are definitely going to sell. And they didn't sell. And like the speed with which, because the market sucks right now and whatever, and I couldn't have predicted that. I mean, I've had an incredible year. I was like all over the 50th. I thought, literally the people who called me and were like, we have to be in business with you.
20th.
Yeah, Wicked's 20th, all of it. And still but nope, it's the market sucks. Like people aren't buying things. What can you do? Like, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person or the idea is a bad person.
Okay, but when you have that rejection, how do you pick yourself back up?
I give myself one really sad night with a giant bottle of white wine and a half a Xanax. And I sleep really, really well, where I'm like just petty and fucking small. And I look up who else's projects got, picked up and I stomp my feet and whatever. And then the next day I wake up and I realize that I have other ideas and a really killer family and an amazing career that everybody wishes that they had. Lots of people wish that they had, and start over. Just do something different, whatever. This is the thing. It's so corny, but it does sort of all work out the way it's supposed to. And usually you don't know why. And again, I sound like I'm like a bumper sticker, but it's, Marty Short like famously has this pie that he keeps in his head, which is like 1/3 work, 1/3 family, 1/3 friends, and that all three have to be in balance at all times. Like that's he can start to sense it. So I was on a great series for NBC I was super proud of called American Auto. I finally was like number 1 on the call sheet. I thought it was really well written. I was not embarrassed by it, which is the first mark. And then I was actually proud of it. And I thought it was really good. And I thought it was saying something and comedically really strong. It was during COVID. The strike happened. Like there were just too many things for any comedy to endure. And we got canceled. And I thought, oh my God, I was like super bummed, for 3 days. And then my mom got sick and I had to move my parents out. And I had 4 solid months of moving my parents out of their place in Albuquerque to like a community where they now live. And I helped them do that. And and it never would have happened if my television show had gone. I was like I went, to like arrange caregivers and stuff. And then like ended up staying for 5 weeks and helping them downsize. And I'll never get that. It was an incredible thing to be there for my parents and to be connected to them in their 80s, So
because we're the sandwich generation, because I had a similar thing and I had to move my mom. And I was like, if I was at my regular job, there's just no way I would be able to come to all these appointments with her.
Well, think about it. Exactly.
I mean, because there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of them and they're like, they're scared and they're overwhelmed by the system and, you want to be available to them. So, and you want your kids to do that for you. Like I loved that I could model that for my kids, like that they, saw me being engaged with my parents in a different way and all that. I got closer to my brother. I mean, so many amazing things happen as a result of it,
Sometimes those moments, I mean, when I left Hyatt, I remember taking time off. And one of the things I will never get back is that I got to spend the summer with my grandmother in California. And when would I ever get that back? But I mean, by the way, it was terrifying. There were moments people called me and told me I was crazy to take time off.
Right.
All those things are true, but you sort of find your way.
And again, I'm lucky. Like that's, whatever. I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to be panicky about the job paying the bills and things like that. It's much more like a creative sense of failure, which is a different kind of a sense of failure than like.
What does that mean?
Meaning like if something isn't working out, it's not like I'm panicking because I have my mortgage to pay. That's a different kind of anxiety, I realize.
Which I've had too. So.
Which I've also had, yeah, too. But that's why I say like there's things to be grateful for. And, look, my son is going into his senior year. And again, if my 2 projects had gone, I probably wouldn't have been able to be available for this process. And, so all those things happen.
So this notion of like it all happens for a reason, it's actually kind of a nice way to look at it.
It is. I mean, I know people roll their eyes, but
I know I roll my eyes, but I sort of find comfort in it as well.
I think the other way of looking at it is you're not just one thing. Like as much as we say, oh, it's so hard to juggle. Well, so this thing isn't taking the priority that it thought it was, which means you have the energy and the focus now to put other things, to give your attention to something meaningful in your life, like your marriage or your mom, like your children, things that yourself, I don't know, go write your novel,
Write your novel.
And I often feel that it happens, I turn around and I'm like, you know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to start a Christmas album. I mean, that's actually the perfect example. I should go back to this. So I was on this show that filmed up in Toronto. It was on TBS, which was having a little bit of a comedy heyday. And it was really fun. And it was like, I've been in so many series now that have gone to season 3 and like something's happened. And in the old days, you'd be like, if it goes to season 3, you're going to like be shitting in silk, as my husband likes to say, like you're going to have your series for 16 years, in your brain. So this show went to season 3 and they convened the entire writer's room. They wrote the entire season. We were 2 weeks into pre-production. I was getting ready to go to Toronto. Like, where am I going to stay? And our series was canceled.
Oh my God.
2 weeks before we began. But because the clock had already begun to run, we got paid. So they did the math and they were like, it'll save us enough money just to cancel the series and pay everybody off for their 13 episodes of television than it will be to actually go make the episodes. I was so bummed. And then I looked right.
Paid sabbatical.
Literally. I was like, well, I have money. I have time to get other jobs. So I'm going to go make a Christmas record. And my very supportive husband was like, I always wanted to make a holiday record. I wanted to produce it myself. And I was like, can we earmark half of this and go make a record? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. You're going to get jobs anyway, so go do it. So that's what we did. That's what I did.
So I'm going to go to rapid fire questions.
Great. I love it.
Okay. Hold on. I need my glasses because that's where I'm at.
Cheaters.
Okay. This will be fun. Karaoke or a walk-on song? Which would you pick? And what's the song?
Oh, God. I hate karaoke because I'm a real singer. So
Okay, walk-on song.
I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar.
Oh, nice.
By Helen Reddy.
Mine is Girl on Fire. So, okay. That made you laugh. Okay. They actually used it once and I thought it was fitting.
It's Up into Club by 50 Cent. I don't know. I don't have one.
Okay. What's a food you'd bring to a potluck?
I always bring the same thing to a potluck. I always bring that watermelon feta salad.
That's very Iranian.
I love Iranian food. And also my grandparents were Greek and Romanian. And basically that's a Greek Romanian salad too. Yeah.
That's why you were an ethnic actress.
That's why I was
okay.
ethnic in the 80s.
An alternative career that you would have chosen if it wasn't in entertainment?
I love food. So I probably would have worked in hospitality or food somehow. I would have worked with kids. I love kids. And I might have wanted to work in, I probably would have worked with kids. I probably would have taught.
Okay. What are you reading, listening, or watching? And you can just pick.
I'm reading Girl on Girl. It's a very enraging assessment of how our generation was taught to hate other women. It's culturally very interesting about the 90s and 2000s media and sort of the birth of, I've only read 2 chapters, but it is really satisfying. Basically how porn kind of infiltrated the mainstream. In the early chapter, she's like, how did we go from Riot Girls to Spice Girls in like a 5-year period, and sort of what the conversation about women in the media was. That's really good.
Okay. One piece of advice.
Just order the first thing on the menu. You're there to hang out with your friends.
Oh, that's a good one. What about SNL? Do you have one favorite messy moment? I
mean, the entire thing is a mess. It's insane. It's absolutely, has its own algorithm, its own, chaos theory. It's just mayhem. It's utter mayhem.
Kind of like the magic of it is the mayhem. Do you think that's true?
It does happen. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how that many people do it and don't. I can't believe nobody's like injured or
That was fun. Well, thank you so much. Honestly, that was amazing.
Yay.